Hey, what's up, everybody? A little bit chilly today, so I'm about half bundled up, but I don't look like an ice ninja out here with something over my face. It's warming up a little bit here, probably in the 40s, so maybe freezing cold, depending on where you live. But today I want to talk about this huge topic, which has just like taken storm. For whatever reason, people jump on the bandwagon of what's hot, and the keto lifestyle. Keto dieting, keto. Everybody is using this word keto as a replacement for low carbohydrate. Reduced carbohydrate is essentially what this breaks down to, guys. So it's a high fat diet as well when you focus on this keto, quote unquote system. But essentially what I want to talk to you guys today about is the 6 tips that help me be successful to lose 30 pounds in 3 months without counting calories or carbs at all. So if you're watching this and you're doing the keto diet, put a 1 in the comments, all right? So Larlin, good to see you. If you're on keto or you're trying to, follow this keto bandwagon, let me know in the comments so I know who I'm talking with here. But what I want to focus on with you guys today is the bigger picture, first of all. Larlin's there, so she's looking at this stuff, so that's good to know. So we are talking about reducing carbohydrates as a lifestyle change. Okay, so this is the first thing to understand. I don't really like the term keto because this is derived from the state that your body goes into after you have a reduced number of carbohydrates stored in your system as blood glucose. Miguel Castillo, good to see you, man. So, Tina, how we doing? Good to see you. So, if you reduce the number of carbohydrates that you take into your system, your body has to kick into overdrive and produce ketones in order to act as a fuel source and to help do some other things, right? And so without getting into the science of it, we're basically talking about a reduced carbohydrate nutrition plan. I don't even like to use the word diet because diet has a temporary connotation. Gene, my man, good to see you. So when we're talking about losing weight, most of the time is the goal. We are too heavy because we have done things up to this point that have caused us to gain weight. So you don't need to lose weight. You need to change the actions that cause you to gain weight. So it's a very, very different mindset, right? And so instead of focusing on the big picture of, I need to lose weight, focus on the thing that you control right now, which is the actions that can cause you to gain weight, right? And so when we talk about these 6 tips, tip number 1 for me, when we start introducing a low carb lifestyle is, first of all, not even the food. That comes on next. The first thing that you want to do is intermittent fasting. Absolutely. Larlin hit it before I even said it. I just read it in the comments, okay? So intermittent fasting is actually the precursor to a low carb lifestyle. And here's the reason, guys, is what we see as a result in our weight is a simple math formula of how much calories go in. How many calories are we eating versus how many go out? How many calories are we burning? Now we have a base metabolic rate. We're going to burn calories just being alive, but the other stuff you do throughout the day, the exercise that you have and the eating frequencies and the type of food that you put in, all these other things go into the factors that determine what that in and out math equation is. Okay? And if you want to lose weight, the simple math equation is burn more calories than what you put into your body. All right? And so this is where intermittent fasting comes in, because if you simply reduce the number of hours in the day where you allow yourself to eat, you're less likely to eat as much. Pretty basic, right? So that's what intermittent fasting comes down to, is it's a short-term amount of time where you don't take in any calories. Now guys, this all sounds really complicated. Every single person already does intermittent fasting. Every single person does. Whether it's just when you sleep or it's also included in an extended period of time when you're actually awake too, Everyone already does this. It's just the amount of time in between one meal and the other. So I recommend, for step one, is to control when you eat. So this is a big thing, making sure that you shorten the window of when you take calories in. Now for me, again, health is not a seasonal thing, right? If you are in an unhealthy state and you want to get to a healthy state, I have not met a single person who has said, I want to get healthy, but only for a little while. Never. The goal is always to get healthy and stay healthy. Well, the only way to do that is to create consistent change in your world that is sustainable long term. So for me, intermittent fasting includes a 16-8 schedule. I don't eat for 16 hours, and I only eat during an 8-hour window. So my 8-hour window is noon to 8 o'clock. So I don't eat breakfast, I don't start eating until noon, and then I make sure I eat my last meal before 8 o'clock, all right? So that's kind of the first step, is my eating window is controlled. And guys, in order for you to have sustainable success long term, you have to do things that are realistic. Now, Larlin said, I only eat at 6 p.m. One meal a day is another popular option that some people are able to do. However, I haven't met very many people who only eat one meal a day for years. Usually it's a very short-term kind of thing. Some people are able to do it, but very few are actually able to sustain that. And so I like to deal with the realistic things that we can control every day and still enjoy life. Still be able to go through every day and not feel like I'm doing nothing but making sacrifices all the time to try and get to this point. Because if you have to consistently sacrifice to get to where you want to be, what are you going to do when you get there? You're going to keep sacrificing forever? At some point, our internal satisfaction seeker kicks in and it says, I want to be satisfied. I want to feel like I am enjoying life and maximizing. Tony, good to see you, man. Hey, there he is, dropping 35 since August. So congratulations, dude. That's fantastic. So controlling your eating window, guys, is something that you can do for the rest of your life. My kids are able to do this. Every single person I've ever explained this to says, oh yeah, I could do that. That makes sense. That's really not that hard. And this is the big picture, guys, okay? Is doing the things that you can sustain. So number one, Laura, good to see you. Number one is controlling when you eat. So that was the intermittent fasting, controlling your eating window. Tip number two, is then focusing on controlling what you eat. Now, I'm not talking about, I'm going to give you a list of foods and meal plans and all that kind of stuff. That's too micro. We're still on a big picture level, okay? We're not counting calories, we're not counting carbs. So I'm not going to have you focus on small stuff yet. It's not there yet. It's not that important yet. Because the micro stuff only matters if you have the big picture handled the rest of the time. So controlling what you eat includes reducing the obvious carbs. Okay, now we live in an information of knowledge like euphoria. We can look up anything we want on Google. And in that we can look up how many carbs are in everything, how much fat, proteins, calories, everything that's in it. And it's very easy to figure out which foods are high in carbohydrates and which ones aren't. Most of the time, we already know this stuff. It's the sugar, it's the potatoes, it's the breads, it's anything made with flour or rice or pasta or cereal. Usually it comes in a box of some kind, right? So it's not a matter of figuring out what specific foods should I eat. It's eliminating the ones that you obviously should not eat. That's a simple step. Stop eating bread, stop eating tortillas, quit eating candy. All right, these are basic things that we already know contain carbohydrates. So in step number 2, simply start by eliminating the obvious carbs during your eating window. So we're going to focus on the first 2 steps, guys. These are the most important. All the rest is actually a lot more micro than this. They're still big picture. But if you do not lock down the first 2 steps of controlling when you eat and controlling what you don't eat, essentially, which is your carbs, the rest doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to sustain it long term. So you want to do this enough times where you control your eating window and you reduce the amount of carbs that you take in for long enough. You do it enough times over time to make it a habit. It's a routine, all right? We're creating a lifestyle change based on doing things long enough over a period of time that it just becomes part of how we do it. Okay, and this is the key, guys. We have, and I'm 37. If the average lifespan for a guy is, say, 85, I got about 50 more years to live. This is not something that is short term. Health is not seasonal. New Year's resolutions are stupid. I absolutely hate when people are like, oh, I'm going to change my whole world because it's January. Who cares? What are you doing in February? What are you doing next year, right? It doesn't matter how quick you get to the results. It's how do you live the rest of your life that matters. So controlling when you eat with intermittent fasting and controlling what you don't eat by reducing the obvious carbs are the 2 most important factors. Now, once we have that down, then number 3 comes down to figuring out how much you should eat. So quantity, right? It's very important that you let this happen naturally. So when I first started getting into this low carb lifestyle, you can call it keto, you can call it whatever title you want, but it's that reduction in carbs. I joined a whole bunch of keto Facebook groups, tons of them, because I wanted to figure out the same questions that all you guys have. What foods should I be eating? How many calories am I supposed to have? What are the carb numbers? Like all the micro things. And what I figured out was that most everybody doesn't actually know what the hell they're doing with this, even though it's extremely simple. Super, super basic stuff. And so I got all kinds of recipes and meal plans and food lists and all kinds of stuff. And it's extremely repetitive. It's very, very simple. But what everybody was focusing on is how can I get to the result the fastest instead of how can I create a long-term sustainable life change. If you're in a group that is a 14-day challenge, now what are you doing after 14 days? Then what? So that doesn't really make sense. So all of these points are focused on the big picture. So step number 3 was how much do I need to be eating? So here was my trick. Rather than trying to focus on changing everything in a day, I only did step 1 and 2 of controlling my eating window and controlling the negative carbs, reducing those obvious carbs for about 2 to 3 weeks. And during my eating window, I let myself eat as much of the food as I wanted to that didn't have carbs. And this was what allowed me to sustain the change long enough where I got used to the eating window and I got used to not having carbs. And then essentially my body started telling me, dude, you're full. You don't really need any more food. And I naturally started to eat less over time because I could focus on the amount instead of when and what and then how much too. It's overwhelming. You have to do it long enough where your focus goes away from it consciously and you just do it subconsciously as part of how you operate. So I had done it long enough to create the habit of only eating during that certain time and not eating carbs when I did eat. And then I was able to be like, wow, I don't actually have a craving to continue to eat now. So then I started focusing on how much I was eating as step number 3. That naturally happened as my progression of my body got used to it, my mind became used to the process, and I just got comfortable with this becoming a lifestyle. So again, I still wasn't paying attention to how many calories are in everything, how many grams of carbs am I eating, whatever. I just knew the kinds of foods that I was supposed to not be eating, and then I just ate less of the foods that I knew I could eat. Very, very basic process, all right? So number 1 is when, number 2 is what, number 3 is how much. Now number 4 is kind of contradictive to this keto lifestyle, keto change, this short-term mentality. Hey, Heather, good to see you. So when it comes to sustainable long-term change, what is important is that you can see yourself doing this long-term. Because if you feel like I'm sacrificing everything all the time and I'm constantly focused on this and I'm just going to power through and I'm going to struggle and I'm, regardless of how I feel, like this is what I have to do, like you'll only fight yourself to stay on point for so long. So number 4 is to cheat on purpose. Sounds very contradictory, but it has lots and lots of benefits and almost no negatives. So when you schedule 1 cheat meal per week, okay, this is important, 1 cheat meal, not a cheat day, a cheat meal per week, multiple things happen. Number 1, it gives you a short-term goal to reach for that isn't that far away. So you allow yourself to maintain the strictness that you need during your eating window with what you're eating and how much most of the time. That 6 days a week leading up to that day where you have the cheat meal gives you that mental strength to say, I'm just going to make the choice right now because I'm looking forward to that meal that's coming up. And I'm going to celebrate it. And I'm going to enjoy the crap out of eating that 1 meal of whatever I want. Not like a couple bites. Eat the whole meal of pasta. Have, 3 or 4 pieces of pizza. Whatever the hell it is that you are craving that is carbohydrate dense, if that's what you really need in your world, give yourself that planned cheat. Because mentally, this is what's going to keep you on point to do the rest of it well enough most of the time. The other part of this is the physical reaction that happens. So when you go out and you have that cheat meal and you've been clean on your eating for the other 6 days, your body sees these carbs and this bad meal as a foreign substance. And it kicks into overdrive to actually flush it out and get that out of your system even faster. So it gives you a jump start in your metabolism, your fat burning mode, that just kickstart overdrive to get that thing out of your system. So this has both mental and physical benefits to schedule the cheat. And somebody asked me this question today. I told them this exact same thing and they said, doesn't that stop you from going into ketosis? Probably. How long of your life do you expect to be in ketosis? Ketosis is like the definition of sacrifice all the time. However, you can get back to it very quickly by simply staying clean most of the time. Ring this in your head over and over most of the time. Nobody is perfect all the time. And if you strive for that and you focus on that, you don't celebrate the success that you've had most of the time. That's how I lost 30 pounds in 3 months through the holidays, guys. through a time of year when most people gain 15 pounds. I lost twice that much. And believe me, I still ate Thanksgiving twice. I still had dessert at both of them. Still had fat Thanksgiving or Christmas dinners and all the stuff. My birthday's in December. Like, I have date night every single week with my wife. That's my cheat meal day. Like, you do not have to be perfect. You don't have to focus on those little areas where you're not doing exactly the thing, as long as most of the time you're on point. Okay? So we're through 4 steps here, guys. Control when you eat, control what you eat, or what you don't eat is actually more important, how much you eat, and then schedule cheating. So now we're getting down to the big picture where this is something you can do consistently for the rest of your life. It's really not that hard, guys. It comes down to how much do you really want to be healthy and for how long. Every time you feel like you're off point, remind yourself what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing, where you actually want to go. Okay, so on top of that, step number 5. This starts to get a little bit more micro, and these are things that I found actually helped in some of those situations. Mike O'Donnell, what's up, my man? When you feel like you want to fall off and you're really just like not getting enough satisfaction on that cheat meal, step number 5 is to find low carb alternatives to the foods that you're craving. So if you go into any of these keto groups and you're on Google or whatever, and you search for low carb alternatives, low carb alternatives to pizza crust, you can find amazing recipes. Like, you can make pizza crust basically with cream cheese and Parmesan cheese. Like, that's pretty much it. It's like so basic. You mix it up and you roll it out on a pan and you bake it. It comes out just like cheese, or just like crust. There are almond flours and coconut flours. There are natural sweeteners like stevia, erythritol. There's so many replacements that you can use as part of what you eat during your eating window that allow you to get away from the mental strain that you're putting on yourself, that I'm sacrificing everything in my world and I don't get to have these things anymore, and whatever that story is that you tell yourself that is going to stop you from staying on point and successful with where you're trying to get, right? So step 5 is to find alternatives. There's so many that, you can really get super creative in what it is that you're actually putting into your meal plans. So you don't have to necessarily eat the same foods over and over and over, which is kind of what happens for most people. They only work with a few set of dishes or a certain ingredient list or whatever it may be, and they get kind of bored. Spice it up, but find a different option than just the straight flour-based crust or sugar-filled, dessert option, or whatever it may be. Find a lower carb alternative that you can replace those carbohydrates with something that's lower carb but has a similar taste and texture to what you're actually looking for to trigger that satisfaction in your head. So those are the first 5. Number 6, guys, I've kind of been talking about through this the whole time. And that is, this is a marathon. Health is not a sprint. There is no trophy that you're going to get if you lose 10 pounds by next week or by next month or by 6 months. Nobody knows what your scale number is unless you tell them. So you want to actually focus on the things that I call non-scale victories. These are the things that, like for me, when I first started, down this path, I was overweight. I still have weight to lose. It's not to say that I've gotten, everywhere I want to be. But when I first started, I would get on the elliptical machine and my face would just jiggle. my face, my cheeks would just jiggle like crazy. I kind of have naturally big cheeks anyway, but after a couple of months, I kind of paid attention. I'm like, I don't feel my face jiggling anymore when I'm doing this elliptical machine. So that was like such a huge non-scale victory for me. Another one is like when you get heavy enough that your stomach starts to fold the underwear, elastic band over because your stomach is hanging over. We call it Dunlap's disease, right? Your stomach Dunlapped over your belt. That didn't happen for me anymore. And none of this had any relation to what the actual number on the scale was. Yes, the number went down, and yes, I tracked it. However, watching the number go down is not enough. Maybe it's something bigger. Like, for example, if you look at your neck, and you have a crease in your neck back here, and the skin is darker than the rest of the skin around it, that's actually a pre-diabetic effect. You're starting to face some serious health issues, and that's what I was dealing with back here. And so now the skin on my neck is not near as dark. I've avoided some of those pre-diabetes situations that I was looking at. And so we're all talking about creating long-term change as the main focus, guys. So the biggest thing, number 6, is most of the time. You want to do this most of the time so you can continue doing it longer than everyone else who's trying to do it perfect right now. Okay? It's not about finishing something. It's not about being perfect in the situation. It's about producing a result that you can continue to do over and over and over and stick to so that you don't have to start over again. Nobody wants to, lose the weight and then go back to whatever it is you were doing and put all that weight back on and then, I got to start over again. First of all, that cycle is really hard on your body. It's extremely hard for your body to go up and down in weight. And understand, guys, when you lose weight, when we say I lost a pound, 1 pound is equal to 4 pounds of pressure on your joints. So I lost 30 pounds. That's 120 pounds less of pressure that I have on my knees. So now I can actually walk up my stairs and my knees don't creak anymore. I thought I was just getting older. Turns out I was just fat. So hopefully you guys got a little bit out of this today, man. I appreciate every single one of you that's sitting here listening to me drone on about the things that, work in my world. If you appreciate this, give me a thumbs up. Hit me in the comments with something that you took away from this. Share this message. If you know somebody who is struggling, trying to take some weight off, and they're in this low carb situation and they're trying to get this, fast result and whatever, and I'm just stressing on it all the time. Guys, you did not put the weight on overnight. It doesn't have to come off, and it probably won't overnight. We have to change over time and have it be sustainable actions so that when we go into any situation, whether it's we're eating out at a restaurant or we're at some social event or whatever the hell the thing you're in, you have a default mode that you can fall on. It will keep you successful for the long term. All right, so I appreciate you guys. Let me know if you have any questions on this, and we'll see you in the next one.